Tonight, you got the pleasure or the displeasure of watching me do my thing. What I'm doing here is Mick, welcome. What I was asked to do by Rick Fling out of the Fly Tires group out of FFI was to if I could put together a discussion about working with folks with ADA and a brief talk about Tankera. I don't know if I can do any kind of brief talking about Tankera. It's just not my nature. So I told him I would do that and that I would also do a quick demo of one-handed fly tying. So what I want to do tonight is kind of practice that meeting and see what we can do. First off, I apologize if things go wrong tonight. I had to completely rebuild my video system this morning. Completely lost my OBS studio, so I had to rebuild it. And I had to replace my webcam with another cam, so my I look a little clearer tonight because I'm with a little bit more expensive camera on the head cam. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and talk about working with disabled veterans. Um, I've been working with disabled veterans for about 10 years now, ever since we started Project Healing Waters here in the Nebraska area. Um, we started the Omaha program. That was the only program in the area. And we also started, we met at both Omaha and in Lincoln. But after about a year, we had meetings here in Omaha at Bellevue University, the MVSC. We were also meeting at a place downtown on the Victory Apartments, which is an organization that houses disabled or not necessarily disabled, but homeless vets. And we were also doing tying sessions and working with people down at the VA Recovery Center down on the VA at the VA, in addition to a fly tying class and fishing with veterans out in Lincoln at the VA out there. So it just got to be too much. So we split the two programs off, and Gene Svensson took over the Lincoln program, and I hung on to the program here in Omaha along with Dave Jacobs. So, so we've been dealing with veterans for about 9 years, as I said. And at first, I did not know what to expect with fly tying and fishing and dealing with veterans. I mean, I spent the whole first year just learning about, number one, what was all about, and number two, what dealing and working with veterans was all about. And what I found is in doing, and I wasn't a very good fly fisherman in those days. I'm still not, but the one thing I did recognize right off the bat when I started doing a little more fly fishing than I had been was that fly fishing is uniquely suited for veterans, especially disabled veterans dealing with PTSD, anxiety, TBI, and physical disabilities. The reason that it's so good with PTSD, I think, is because it's calming and rhythmic. If you stop and think about the way you cast, it's pretty straightforward. It's 1, 2, 1, 2, and you can get into a rhythm with that. That's very relaxing. At least it is for me. It's also, for me, casting and fly tying are a lot like playing golf. If any of you ever played golf, you know that you're always striving for that perfect stroke and the perfect ball. Um, Fly fishing for me is kind of the same thing. Um, it's very, very, very immersive and mind focusing. And if you stop and think about what we do when we fly fish, most of us, when we get to the water, we stop and we look and we evaluate. We're trying to read the water to find out where the pockets are, where the fish are, or could be. Um, and then we look at the terrain to try and figure out where we can cast, because especially here in Nebraska, a lot of the creeks that we deal with here are overgrown, especially out west. One of the creeks that I fish out there is Monroe, and it's only about 2 feet wide, and it's just choked with bushes, and it's completely unmaintained. There is a nice creek out there though called Sowbelly Creek that's very open, and it's a nice creek to fish. It's a lot like the verdigris is here in eastern Nebraska. So you also have to watch that line. Now I know a lot of people use strike indicators or fly fishing bobbers, but I've never actually, I've used them on occasion, but I don't like to do that. And I guess that's a carryover from when my dad taught me how to fish. He was not a fly fisherman, but he taught me that if you're going to fish, you got to watch the line and you got to feel the line. So I can remember back when I was a kid, he showed me when you fish, you hold on to the rod with your left hand, and then you hold on to the line between your thumb and your forefinger. And that way you can tell if a fish bites you or not. So, and I've always done that. I've always watched the end of the line. Uh, when I put together a leader, I always put a piece of colored mono, or when I make the furled leaders, I splice in a piece of colored furled leader on where it connects to the fly line, and that acts kind of like a strike indicator for me. So the nice thing about fly fishing is you can feel subtle movements through the rod. But again, concentration. You've got to be concentrating on the cast, the rod, the water, and it forces you to get rid of all the other intrusive thoughts that you may have. So it's also to me, it's just getting back to nature and enjoying just the pure joy of being out and about and not having any loud noises and traffic and et cetera, et cetera. So you're outdoors with nature. And I mean, let's face it, it doesn't get much better than that. I've been out many times. I love to fish in the wintertime. I've been out on the Arkansas River, the South Platte River near Deckers, which is used to be one of my favorite places to fish, in October and November in the middle of a snowstorm. And have it so quiet, snow's coming straight down and it's peaceful. You can almost hear the snow hitting the water, and you can hear the squirrels and the chipmunks rustling through the leaves, and you can hear all kinds of animals. I've been up on the verdigris in the wintertime, and it's absolutely beautiful and quiet. There's something about snow on the ground. It dampens all the noise and just makes it really quiet. But all you can hear again is animals that are running on the ground, and turkey up there. You hear a lot of turkey. So accessibility for disabled veterans has been an issue for a long time. I know when I first got here to Nebraska and we started looking at that, there was some problems with accessibility. In fact, when I was on at the TU, we did a lot of work out in Spotted Tail Creek on the west. And one of the things that as TU we demanded was that when they did the rebuild, that they make it accessible to veterans. Um, so we've got veterans who have limited mobility. So accessibility becomes a very, very big problem. Um, I know down at Bennett Spring, I've been down there, and that's a very accessible place. I've seen veterans with wheelchairs fishing down there quite often. In fact, I was down there one day and I saw a veteran in a chair, and a chair had a tank tread on it, and he drove that thing right into the water. I mean, it was amazing. Another problem a lot of our veterans have is limited grip strength. So that creates an issue when you're fly fishing. So what we have to do is provide larger rods with larger grips on them than you normally get commercially. And there's also you can also use Tankera rods with limited grip. because that makes it a little bit easier to fish with that Tankera rod. And of course, PTSD, anxiety. I've been out on the water with some of our veterans, and when we before we get out on the water, they're nervous and jittery and jumping, and boy, you get them out on the water and you start them casting, and they just calm down, and I mean, it's really amazing to watch. So, and I'll talk about Tenkara here in just a minute. But before I get any further, I want to change topics over to Tenkara. I want to talk just a little bit about a couple of experiences we had here in when I was with Healing Waters. We had several veterans that really made significant progress with through fly fishing. One had been in the sandbox, Iraq and Afghanistan, and he came back with really severe PTSD. When we first met him, he was very reserved, very quiet, very not very communicable at all. And we worked with him. We taught him how to tie flies. We taught him how to build rods. We took him out fly fishing. And his mother was his caregiver, and she would bring him to every single event that he wanted to come to. And he came to all of them. He was amazing. About 2 years after he started, his mother came up to me and she said, "Thank you. You gave me back my son." She said, "Before he started fishing with you guys and working with you guys, he would not come out of his bedroom. He wasn't communicative." He said, "But since he's been working with you, he's now comes out to the living room. We chat, we talk, and it's wonderful having him back again." So, and we attribute that to the fly tying and the fly rod building and the other things that not only Healing Waters, but also the organization I'm currently a part of, Platte Rivers Veterans Fly Fishing. And we do exactly the same things. In fact, Platte Rivers is a spinoff of Healing Waters. So, um, another one of our veterans, and was he had a TBI, traumatic brain injury. And when we first met him, was at the Military Veteran Service Center. He came into our rod building class, as I recall. It's been a while, and like I say, memory gets bad after a while. And he came in and he decided he wanted to tie or build a rod, and his wife was his caregiver at the time. And we worked with him and got him that first rod built. He started coming to our fly tying classes, started coming to fly fishing, and he really embraced the sport. And he got to be a very accomplished rod builder and a very accomplished fly tyer. And in fact, it was about a couple of months ago, earlier this spring, actually, that he was the star of a Zoom call that an organization he was with uh, hosted him as a fly tyer. And he demonstrated tying a fly and how he instructs people to tie flies. And that's, again, uh, big changes. Unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say, he passed away 3 weeks ago. Not due to his TBI. We're still not sure just exactly what happened. Neither has his wife. So there's and Bill Klumper, who's here with us tonight. If you ever watch Bill sit at a device, before he sits down, he's a little bit shaky. His hands shake. Mine do that too sometimes. And I've watched Bill tie now for a little over 2 years, and I've watched him fish for about the same time. And as soon as he gets fishing or tying and concentrating on what he's doing, although his shaking hands don't go completely away, they're much improved. And he has turned into one of the better fly tyers. In fact, probably the most original fly tyer I've seen in a long time. Bill will take materials that most of us would never think of using on a fly, and he'll turn them into some of the most amazing fly patterns you've ever seen. So, but yeah, fly fishing and these organizations, Project Healing Waters, Platte Rivers, and a few others around town. Heroes on the Water, which deals with veterans, and they use kayaks to get them out fishing. And they're not limited to just fly fishing. They take them out with kayaks, and they can fish anything they want. So there's a lot of veterans organizations around Omaha and around the country that work with disabled veterans and veterans in general. So, and it's really worth the time and the effort to work with a disabled veteran. And I think most of us who are veterans or were spent some time in the military, especially if we spent any time at all in combat, probably have some form of PTSD, mild PTSD. And working with other veterans is tremendously cathartic for me. It really does help. I didn't realize some of the things I was doing until I um, uh, saw me and other veterans, and I realized that, yeah, I too had PTSD. So not a serious case, but I did. So anyway, yeah, the one thing I have learned, and this applies not only to veterans, but also to any new person new to fly tying. I try to keep everything as simple as possible. Um, when I get a brand new student and he's wants to learn how to cast, um, I teach the very basic fly casting technique. Uh, bring the rod up to your ear and bring it down to about a 45-degree angle. I used to say 10 and 2 or 10 and or noon or 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock or 12 o'clock and 10 o'clock until I was dealing with a bunch of fourth and fifth graders, and they said, "What do you mean 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock?" I said, "My watch has numbers." So it dawned on me that some of these young people today have never seen an analog clock, and they have absolutely no idea what 12 and 2 means. So that's when I changed my technique and I said, okay, bring the rod to your ear and stop it there, and then bring it down to about a 45-degree angle. And sometimes you have to tell them what a 45-degree angle is too, but that's a little easier than trying to tell them about 2 o'clock. So keep it simple. Fly tying, we always anybody that's ever taught fly tying knows we keep it very, very simple to start with. First fly most people demonstrate and tie is the San Juan worm, which basically you teach them how to do a jam knot and then how to attach material to the hook, which are two things that you have to have in every fly you make. Two techniques that you have to accomplish and have to master before you can go on to other flies. So. And I've had students where we've maybe tied that fly 3 and 4 or 5 times in a session until they finally get it down. Uh, it's surprising how sometimes how difficult it is for people to figure out the jam knot. So it takes a little bit of concentration sometime, which again is a good thing. Okay. So before I go on to a Tankera, one of my favorite subjects, does anybody have any questions or do you have any experiences you'd like to share? Anyone? Oh, okay.
Just
Well, let's
thank
go
you.
on. Huh?
Just thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Bill. Let's see here. Let's talk about Tankera. Okay. Um, let's see here. Where is it? Okay. That's interesting. Well, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Ah, there it is. I just found a new toy. If you're wondering what I'm doing, somebody told me about this AI stuff, and as an old computer guy, I've never had much faith in AI, and I've never had much use for it. So somebody said, if you use Chat GPT to do research, I mean, it is a huge database out there and it can bring back a lot of really interesting stuff. So The first thing I did was I went out to Chat GPT and I asked it for show me a history of Tankera. And that's what I've got here. And that's what I'm kind of going to talk about tonight or use to talk. But Tankera, what is it? What's it used for? And is it for everybody? The last question first. No, it's not for everybody. Nor is it for every kind of fly fishing. Um, Tenkara is a traditional Japanese form of fly fishing. It's been around for 400 or 500 years. But what's interesting is it wasn't documented until the 1800s when a gentleman from Britain was in Japan and he happened to see a fly fisherman fishing with a Tenkara rod. And he thought that was interesting, so he wrote up a pretty good article on Tenkara fishing. Um, what I found interesting was when I stumbled across it. When I stumbled across Tankera, I was looking for fly rod building kits for a class we were getting ready to teach. And I came across a company that is now out of business that was selling Tankera rods and Tankera kits. The first question I ask is, what in the heck is a Tankera rod? So I wrote him a letter and I asked him what it is and what it's good for and how do you use it. And he sent me back and some links to some videos that he's made on what Tankera is and casting with Tankera and different things. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The first thing I noticed was number one, no reel on the rod. Number two, the line was tied on to the end of it. And the first thought I had was, my goodness, that's a collapsible cane pole. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. And the fishing that you do with the cane pole is very similar to how we fish with the tenkara, at least how we cast the tenkara. But it originated in the mountainous region of Japan, um, where professional fishermen known as Yamabushi, uh, mountain monks is what that translates to. Matagai are hunters, and Kawadoko, which are river workers. Those are the translations. Use the simple tools to catch fish. And they used them so they could provide fish. They were commercial fishermen providing fish to restaurants and local families in the mountainous region. And the fish they were catching, and I thought this was interesting, were trout and char. And the name in Japan is Iwana, Yomami, and Amagao. Amago. Um, so the rod was originally developed to fish for trout. And I thought that was interesting because I believe the Western fly rods got their beginnings on the trout streams of England. In fact, what I found interesting when I did some research on fly fishing in England, I found a lithograph from the 1400s that talked about the first fly fisherman, and it had a picture of him or her. And guess what they were using? A branch with a string tied on the end of it and a fly on the end of the string. I thought that was interesting. They're using a form of cane pole too. So it seems like most fly fishing has a common root. Now, a lot of you here are probably veterans, so you probably went through some form of survival school. And I can tell you when I was flying, I used to carry a survival kit with me, and the only thing I carried in that kit was a piece of monofilament line and some hooks because I could always cut a branch and use a branch to fish with. So basic fly fishing is nothing more than basic fishing, I guess. So the earliest reference to fly fishing was in the Edo period of Japan from 1603 to 1868. And as I said, the only place I could find anything written was from an Englishman in about the 1850s. It was practical. It was not a sport. I think that's interesting. It was used by the mountain villagers who relied on fish to eat. So it was a subsistence fishing technique. And in those days, fishermen used bamboo rods, horsehair lines, and hand-tied flies made from feathers and thread. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I thought what was interesting was they started with the same, almost the same materials that the Western fly fishermen started with: bamboo, horsehair lines, and a fly. So interesting. The name Tankera, although there is no documentation on what it exactly means, most common acceptance is it's from heaven, meaning from the sky, which is where the fly comes from when you cast it. So I don't know if that's true or not. So we'll see. Okay, traditional tackle for the Tankera fly fishermen hasn't changed a whole lot other than the materials that they're made out of now. The original bamboo rods were collapsible too. They were hollowed out and the bamboo, each section slid into the other one. They were long. They were about 10 to 15 feet long with no reel, of course. The line, braided horsehair. Later, they used silk and then nylon. The fly, which is called a kabari, was a simple, durable pattern. And we will talk about, wait a minute here. I'll talk about the kabari fly in just a minute, but the fly itself is a Sakasa kabari, and kabari means reverse hackle. Sakasa means feathered pin or feathered hook. So a Sakasa kabari is a reversed hackle feathered hook, or basically a reverse hackle wet fly is what it is, or soft hackle fly. Um, Tankera received a revitalization in the 20th century by a Dr. Hirosu, boy, forgive me on this, Tisagasi, I think it is. Helped preserve and modernize the Tankera, refining the technique and sharing it widely. Um, he emphasized presentation over pattern. Now, Tankera is different in that respect from the Western fly fishing that we're all used to. Um, we all believe in match the hatch. Uh, I say we, Western fly fishermen believe in match the hatch. We've all heard that. In fact, most of our fly boxes are full of all different kinds of flies, wet flies, dry flies, midges, nymphs, that we use to attempt to mimic what it is that we think the fish is eating. Japanese Tankera fishermen don't do that. In fact, I read that most Tankera fly fishermen only carry one or possibly two patterns with them, the Sakasa Kabari patterns. And what they try to do is they emphasize presentation over the pattern itself. So a typical Tankera fly fisherman will say that if I'm not catching fish, it means I'm not presenting my fly properly. So they will change their method of presentation to see if that's more productive. The Tankeras were not introduced to the West out here until about the year 2000, when Daniel Gajardo, founder of Tankera USA, who had studied Tankera in Japan, brought them back to this country. Uh, it's often compared to Zen practice. And to me, all of fly fishing is kind of Zen. By that I mean it's mindfulness and harmony with nature and quiet and peaceful. Um, Tankera is all of those things, plus it's extraordinary. It's real simplicity. Okay. Um, I got into Tankera big time a few years ago because I was having some back issues. In fact, it got so bad I had to stop wearing my my fly fishing vest because it was too heavy and it was bothering my neck. So I went to Tankera because it was so much lighter. I got rid of all my fly boxes and replaced them with uh, a simple fly box, which I something like that. Oh, sorry about that. That light is blasting off of it. Um, there we go. So that's the only that's what I carry with me now when I go fishing. And what I do is you can see, I don't know if you can see, no, you can't. This one is labeled autumn flies. Um, those are the flies that I fish in the fall. And basically, there's only two flies in there. The rainbow warrior and the yellow gurgler. So when I'm fishing Tankera, I don't limit myself to just the Casa Kabari. Um, I'll use a lot of gurglers. I'll use a lot of other patterns. But when I go out fly fishing with the Tankera, I only carry two or three different patterns with me. Okay. Okay. So what is the difference other than the obvious no reel? First off, the origin, Tankera started in Japan. Western fly fishing started in Europe, predominantly in England, and then moved to North America. And as I said, it looks like we can document fly fishing in England going back to the 15th century, the 1400s. Tankera rods is probably the most notable difference. Tankera rods are 10 to 15 feet long, and actually that's not true anymore. Just a second. There's a Tankera rod right there. Let me see if I can get that in the picture. There it is, right there. That rod is about 18 inches long. It only extends to 6 feet. And I bought this rod to use on some of the creeks out in Fort Robinson. And then I just recently bought this one. And I buy my rods from, yeah, there it is. Oop, Dragon Tail. I've got about five or six of their rods, and I think they make a great rod um, at a decent price. I mean, Tankera USA is a little bit high, I think. Uh, and Daniel is a great guy, and he really knows a lot about Tankera, but I think his rods are a little bit. I'm sure they're really fine, excellent rod, but they're a little more money than I can justify spending on another fly rod. I mean, yeah, I'm probably like most of you. We've probably got six times more fly rods than we need, but this is the last one I just bought, and this is I think it's 185. No, a second. I gotta get some glasses on here. The little one is 185 centimeters long or 6 feet. This one is 245 or 8 feet. So there is an 8 foot Tenkara rod. And again, I bought this one primarily for small streams. I was thinking of the verdigris on this one right here because 8 feet is just about the same length as my 3 weight rod that I use up on the verdigris. So we'll see how that works. Okay. Line is another big thing that's different because the Tenkara line is very simple. It's a piece of monofilament, and the Tankera line is measured a little bit differently. It's not measured in pounds of test. It's measured in a number, 3.5, and I use either a 3 or a 3.5. What those numbers are, I've never really been able to find an adequate answer to that. Um, but I know that some of them, the 3 works good on some of my rods. The 3.5 works good on some of them. Both of them work okay on all of my rods. Of course, a standard or a Western fly rod, we've got backing and fly line and leader and tippet and everything else, so it gets pretty complex. Again, simplicity. Remember what I said. When dealing with veterans, I like to keep it simple. Casting. Well, the casting stroke is very similar, surprisingly. It's if you see some of the masters casting, the Japanese masters, they're using almost exactly the same stroke. up to the year, down to 10 o'clock or to 45 degree. So it's pretty consistently the same thing. I was kind of surprised at that. The flies, of course, we've already talked about that. The technique, we've talked about that. Tankera focuses on presentation, and Western fly fishermen talk about matching the hatch. Water type, this is where the real big difference is. Um, for a while, for about 2 years, I used my Tankera exclusively. I kind of put all my Western fly rods away and said, I'm not going to use them anymore. Well, that was probably a big mistake. Um, about 2 years later, I pulled them out again, and because the Tankera rod, although you can use it any place, in fact, I've seen people catch 60, 70, 80 pound carp on a Tankera rod. They're primarily designed for small streams without too much overhanging brush. So they're small, open streams. That's where they're best used. Western fly rod, because you've got the capability to get out there and extend it, you can pretty much use the Western rod any place you want to. The targeted fish, you know, trout in Japan for Tankera. In this country, any fish. I think most of us have caught just about every kind of fish there is here in Nebraska on a fly rod. Okay. Skill focus, primarily in Tankera, we're worried about watching the line, precise drifts, and fly manipulation. In some respects, Tankera fishing is a lot like Euro nymphing. Same kind of thing. Line control and watching the drift is important. In conventional fly fishing, we're primarily get concerned with the casting technique and pattern selection and distance and accuracy. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Um, I still struggle to get distance and accuracy, and in fact, I struggle with pattern selection too. Come to think of it, I still struggle a lot with all kinds of casting. So, okay, so that's Tankera. And I really like Tankera as an introductory form of fly fishing for veterans. Number one, because it's so simple. The whole philosophy of Tankera fishing is simplicity, which I like real well. And number two, it's easy. I mean it's really easy and it's calming and you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, granted, I also enjoy teaching Western fly fishing to our veterans. That's also, I think, very calming. And what I have found and what I have tried to do is start the veterans with a Tankera and then migrate them over to a Western fly rod. So I try to get them to use the Tankera to perfect their casting, to get their muscle memory down pat. And then when we move over to the Western fly rod, it's just a little bit easier for them to handle that. So, any questions on Tankera? Okay, no questions. Well, then now you're going to have to suffer with me trying to tie a one-handed fly. Um,
John, hear
yeah,
me?
yeah.
Hey, this is Jeff. Sorry, I used a different device tonight.
Uh,
Where
I'm
would you say?
you're breaking up.
Oh, where would you start with Tankera?
You mean location?
No equipment for a
Oh,
beginner.
equipment. Um, like everything else, or like a Western fly rod, the first question you would have to ask is where are you going to use it? Um, I've got Tankera rods, everything from a 14 down to a 6 foot. So if you're going to be primarily using it in places like Halleck Park and Fontanelle or Weeping Waters or some of the lakes around town, I would probably go with the standard 10 to 12 foot rod. A 10 to 12 foot rod with 10 to 12 foot of line and an 18-inch leader or tippet section on it will give you about 20 feet reach, 20 feet of reach. And that should get you out to just about That should get you out in the area of a lot of fish in the local area. So 10 to 12 feet.
Okay. Okay.
I would suggest that dragon tail. What is that? Let me see real quick. The Shadow Fire, the 365. That's like the basic one you could get
Yeah.
at Amazon.
Yep.
That's the one I started with, and that one really got me hooked into it. Where then I started buying others. But that would be a good starter rod if you wanted to get into Tankera.
I
That's
agree.
just black. Yep.
I agree. My first rod was a kit. I bought it from that company I told you about, and I built it, and it was a 12 footer. Um, but one of the things I started doing, they make them now to where they have three, you can buy one rod and you can extend it to three different lengths. And I just bought one here about 2 years ago called the Firefox or Foxfire. I forget which it is. And it goes from 8 feet to 12 feet in three different lengths. And if you want to watch that rod and see how it fishes, there's a YouTube channel called the Tankera Addict, and he does a demonstration of using that particular rod in the three different lengths. And he talks about well, what length, how they work in the different lengths. And what he found was basically that the mid length that casted really, really well, the long length, not so good, and the short length, really, really well. He said the problem he had with it was because of the combination of fiberglass along with carbon fiber. He said at the long length, it was a little bit too soft for him. So I've got one and I've used it, and I agree. It's the mid length is perfect, and the short length is ideal for the verdigris in some of the spaces that aren't overgrown. Anything else? And if you want to see some demonstrations of Sakasa Kabari, that'll be the one of the flies or that'll be the fly I tie tonight. You can go out to Tankera USA, and no, it's not Tankera USA. Jason Kloss is the name of the tire, and he does a whole bunch of Sakasa Kabari flies. Um, Two that he tied that I really like and I've had a lot of success with is the Japanese lantern. And he ties them in two different patterns, the Japanese lantern lighted and the Japanese lantern period. So one of them's black, one of them's white. Uh, the white one works really well down in Bennett Spring, as Nick can attest. So
Yeah, John, this is Roger. I would liken using a Takara, particularly as the longer ones, to like fishing with a Western bamboo or whatever. It's just a softer rod. They get so fine out there to get that length that it's just has a lot more flex, and it just
yeah,
requires a gentler approach to it. The same as when you go back and you pick up an old Western bamboo rod, that they
yeah.
just have more flex.
Or even some of the newer fiberglass rods are kind of like that too. Yeah, it is. And I liken the casting a tenkara or casting a fiberglass or a bamboo as when you're casting a carbon fiber rod, you're sitting in an easy chair. When you're casting a fiberglass or a tenkara rod, you're in a rocker, and you better slow down. So, anything else? Like I say, tenkara is a lot of fun. It's not for everybody. It's not for every fishing occasion, but uh, it is a lot of fun to fish on some of these, and I really enjoy it on the verdigris.
Yeah,
So
give it a try. I
yes,
listened to
absolutely.
John. I got one. Now I have two, and it's going to help me in a little bit. I just found out I'm going to have shoulder surgery. So the Western's going to be tough, but I
Yeah,
know I could still fish with a Tenkara. So that's going to be my off-season rod to go to. So
yeah,
give it a try. They're a
yeah.
lot of fun.
And one of the things that I liked about the Tankera was you only need one hand to fish it. And when we start talking about it, I'll talk about it kind of good lead into one-handed fly tying. When I was when we had our classes at Lincoln, we were there one day and a veteran came in and he only had the use of one hand. And he asked me, he said, "Can I tie a fly if I've only got the use of one hand?" And I said, "Well, I don't see why not." He said, "Can you show me how?" And I said, "I would love to, but I don't know how to do it myself." So that's what got me on this journey to learn how to tie one-handed flies. And I'll talk about a device called the Evergreen Hand here in a little bit. But and it's a device that's made specifically for one-handed fly tying, and it was made by a gentleman, a retired Army or Air Force colonel. I forget what it is, but I believe he was a flight surgeon, and he had the similar sort of experience. So he developed, along with another gentleman, he developed this one, and they're marketing it now, and it's free to anybody that wants one, as long as they can demonstrate that they have a need for a one-handed fly tying vise. So, and there's a site online. If you go out to Evergreen Hand and just plug that into Google, the very first site that pops up is the place you want to go. And he's got videos on how to use it, and then a link to how you can order one if you need one. So, I recommend that anybody working with veterans, any group, organization, have one, just so you're protected, so you're ready to go when you get somebody that's only got the use of one hand. We will never experience that issue again when we can't tell a veteran how to tie a fly because he's missing the use of a hand. And the same is true with casting. The same company also makes a device for one-handed casters. And I haven't seen it yet. I've got to go take a look at it, but I can use a Tankera as a one-handed casting tool very, very easily. So that was what I would recommend as a starter for someone who only has the use of one hand or one arm. So, anything else? Okay. Well, then I tell you what, let's do. Okay. Let me switch cameras here. There we go. Okay. That's my vise. And I apologize today. I've got lights all over the place and a camera and a vise. And this right here, that is a power supply off of an old PC. I was looking around the other day for something that was steel that I could use to hold these sort of things on. Okay. Then I found this, so. And I needed to put this background up because I was getting some glare off my monitor. You can see my monitor is right back here. So I can kind of watch what I'm doing on the monitor while I'm sitting in front of the fly tying bench. Okay. So how do I tie a fly with one hand? Well, the biggest problem I figured I had to solve was, what do I use for a second hand? Because really, you can't tie a fly with one hand. At least I can't. I've never been able to find a way to tie a fly with one hand. Um, there's just too much going on. I mean, if you stop and think about a jam knot, I'm not even sure how you would put a jam knot on with one hand, although I'm sure there's a way, and I'll bet Albedi could figure it out within 5 minutes, but I haven't been smart enough to figure that out. So what I decided I would do is try to find something that I could substitute for my hand. And what I found was, if I grab some of these right here, these are just alligator clips that you use for electronics. And if I that's just a flange bolt down there that I epoxied in place. And I think that's a 3/8 inch flange bolt that fits perfectly around the base of that thing. And then I just put a little magnet on the bottom of it, and that thing just sticks up there just nice. I also, let's see if I can find one. Oh, here we go. I also put magnets on these little test clips. We've all used these, we've all seen these. So, and I've got a couple of them around here already configured and ready to go. So that's what I'm going to be using tonight. This one, and I've got this one here as well. I know Al knows what this is. This is a model parts holder, and I've got several of these that I use for lots of different things, but they work real well for one-handed tying too. So, all right. So the first question, the first problem you've got is how are you going to get a hook in that vise? Okay. So I've solved that problem, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay. This is over on a table to my right. What I did is I built another little tool, a tongue depressor with a magnet on it. And this is just a little magnet that it's a strip magnet. There you go. And I actually saw, who was it from Tight Lines? Kelly Gallup, I think, uses this to get beads out of packages. And I said, hey, you know what? That'd work good for getting hooks out of packages. So I'm going to stick my left hand in my slap right now, and I'm not going to use it again while I'm tying flies right now. And I'm going to reach in here, and I'm going to use this magnet to grab out some hooks. And you can see I got a whole bunch of them. I'm just going to take one, put it right there. And now I'm going to put the rest of them over here. And I've got this little cup that I just took off my Tankera rod. I'll just put them in there. Okay, I'll grab one of these. And now I've got another tool. This has got a little bit stronger magnet on it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it, yeah, right there. Okay. And now I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to grab that magnetic clamp you saw me using a minute ago. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to clamp that onto it. There. Now I've got the hook clamped in there. I got to put my glasses on, so I'm going to use my other hand. Put on my glasses. Okay, now I got to come back to my vise camera. All right. So I'm going to put this right in here, just like that. I'm going to turn that around. And I think you can already see where I'm going with this. There you go. You can see the hook right there. What I'm going to do, so I've already got the vise open. I'm going to take that hook and I'm going to move it into the vise. Just like that. And then we'll clamp her down. That's actually, I want that a little bit higher. There we go. I'll clamp that down. Okay. Problem one solved. I now have a hook in the vise. Next problem. Now I got to figure out how to put a jam knot on. Because if I get my thread out, there we go. I got a bobbin with thread on it. And if I just loop that over, doesn't work too good, does do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down on the ground. Let me bring it back over here. Switch cameras again. And I'm going to grab my clamp again. I'll come down here. And I'm going to clip on to the thread. Oh. And I've got a magnet. I am clamped onto my hooks. There we go. So now I've got it. There you go. You can see it's hanging on the hook right there. Oh, and I dropped it. Okay. I'm going to take this back now and I'm going to put it on my desk because I got a piece of steel on my desk that I can just put that on. Well, I change cameras again. There we go. Okay, now I can take this and I can put it there. And I can let out a little bit of thread and I can tie. Okay, push that back a little bit. And I want to go back about 1 eye width. There we go. 1, 2, 3. And now I'll come over here. 1, 2, 3. And now I've got my jam knot in place. And I'm going to tie a Sakasa Kabara fly. So, okay. Let me grab my scissors and we'll cut that off. There we go. And there's that. Now, the first thing I tie on with a Sakasa Kabari. Ooh, shoot. Knock the camera out. Sorry about that. The very first thing you tie in on the Sakasa Kabari is the hackle. The classic Sakasa Kabari fly is tied from front to back. It's not tied from back to front like our Western flies are. So the first thing you have to do is get you some hackle. Now I would normally use pheasant on this, but I already had a piece of hackle out. I already had this out. I was tying some other flies today. Rather than go in and get the pheasant out, I decided I'd just tie it up with this. It's all the same. I mean, all I'm trying to show you, not trying to show you how to tie a fly, tie the Sakasa Kabari. I'm trying to show you how to use a one-handed techniques. So I just grab this, I grab it with my fingers. So now I put my heel of my hand on the neck and just pull it off like so. Now, what you have to do now is kind of think about how you want to put this fly on the hook. Because what I wanted to put it on the hook is I wanted to attach it right here, okay, at the tip end. And I want to wrap it so that the fibers, I want to put it on the hook such that the fibers are pointed backwards. So that means I want to put it on the hook like so. Okay. And you can see that. All right. So now I have to figure out how am I going to go about doing that. Okay, so once again, I get my clip out and I clip it on. Just make sure I'm hooking it on the right end. Okay. Okay. I'm going to clip it right here. There we go. Now, put it here. I'm going to strip the fibers forward, just like you do with a there we go. And put it in place. There, put it right down on the tie-in spot. And capture that guy right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this one right here. And I'm going to, for a minute here anyway, I'm going to grab it. Come here. I need to get it out of the way. There we go. So for the time being, I'm just going to put it right so, like so. And I already broke it up there. Okay, so. Okay, get that in there good and tight. There we go. Now I can let that go. And I'll bring my thread back forward to about the 1 eye width length or position. A little bit further. There. Okay. Now I'm gonna wrap this around the, going to put my, there we go. I want to grab this thing again. I'm going to put it on here. And I've actually got way too much feather. So I'm just going to do this and I'm going to cut this off. Here, I'm going to put this, come here, you. I'm going to put the bobbin back here, like so. And now I'm just going to wrap this around. Stroke the fibers forward. And come around, forward, around, forward. Okay, and I drop the, there we go. It broke. There we go. We'll try that again. Son of a, come here, you. Sorry about that. Bring it forward a little bit. And one more wrap. There we go. Now I'm going to come around this, around, and I'll wrap this down. And one more time around the back. There. Put that up there. Put this over here so I don't cut the thread. There we go. Forward, and now I'm going to do just some wraps here to, looks like I lost a piece there. I'm going to have to get that out. There we go. Okay. Now, all I have to do is just wrap thread on the hook. Because the Sakasa Kabari is a thread hook. It's a thread body. And it is somewhat tapered. You flatten out that string a little bit. Now, this hackle was way too short. I think you can probably see that already. But that's okay. I think you get the idea. In other words, okay, so now all you'd have to do is just build a body up. You know, that's it. Okay. And then we just do a quick little half hitch on it. Okay, 1, 2, and we're done. And it looks like I trapped some fibers in here. And there is a one-handed Sakasa Kabari. So the whole idea behind one-handed tying is it's a lot easier without all this stuff in front of you, is to find a way to substitute for your second hand. And I have found these things work very, very well. And at least they work well for me. Let me show you, before we break for the night, let me show you, I'm going to move this out of here. The evergreen hand. I've got to move this vise out. Okay, there's the evergreen hand. And it's mounted on a peak vise. Yeah, it looks like I'm missing a piece here. There's supposed to be a couple of more pieces in here that I don't see. There we go. Okay, let me just get rid of this thing here. It's driving me crazy. There we go. I'll just hold that up by hand. Okay. You can see this is just a piece of steel. And you can see they've done the same thing here. You'll notice that they just put a magnet in the bottom of this one. This piece right here is for using on hair. What you do, bring it over here a little bit. Yeah, do this and it opens up. This thing comes on out. Let me just bring this over here. Like so. And you go on and you grab some hair. And then you put this back together. Like so. And then you can move it like so you can squeeze it together, and then you can move it wherever you want to. There used to be two little cams right on here that you could use to put a piece of material in here and turn the cam and hold it. And I'm not sure why they took those off. But the U device right here kind of works like so. And it's got a tightening rod right over here. Everything on this is movable so that you can move it wherever you want, wherever you need it. So, okay, that's the evergreen hand. And I have used it, and it does make one-handed tying a lot easier, mainly because everything is nice and compact, and it's rigid, I mean, unlike that thing I was using, it's not going to move around on you. So, all right. Anybody have any questions?
Way cool, John. Thank you.
You're welcome,
Yep.
Bill.
And I just checked the site. You could still order them for free. And so I know
Yep.
I left mine with the Project Healing Waters group. So
Yeah.
I ordered another one. So we'll see if I get it or not. And we'll see. So they are out there available.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you're dealing with veterans, and it's something you need to have, because I really was embarrassed when I was in that one time, and that gentleman never came back,
Yeah.
and we lost an opportunity there to help somebody, and we'll never get that opportunity back again. And that's sad. That's really sad.
Yeah.
So
Back in the early 80s, I did some training of vets myself when I first moved to Sandpoint. So that would have been in the early 80s before any of these things were around. Never thought about what you did, but I happened to have two vets. One was a bad left hand, and the other one was a bad right hand. And I had them sit side by side, and each one was a half a person.
Hmm.
And since then, Gretchen and I have pretty much perfected that type of tying. And well, in fact, if you go to our YouTube site, you'll find us demonstrating it there on one of the videos. I don't know which one.
okay. Yeah, Al, you showed me some really, that was about almost 2 years ago. When we first started tying this, and we talked about, putting together some stuff, and you showed me some really nice techniques that you use for it. And that's what got me on this, sent me down this rabbit hole, as it were. Anybody else? Well, if not, then let me go ahead and stop the recording.